So hey everybody, it's the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm Aaron Maté, sitting in for Jimmy, here with Americans comedian Kurt Metzger. And our guest is Briahna Joy Gray. She is host of the podcast Bad Faith, a co-host for Hill TV's Rising, and also host of the call-in show The Debrief with Briahna Joy Gray. Bri, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying this victory lap as well, Aaron. So it's good to be here.
Well, hey, we're really glad you're here to run the race with us, the victory lap race with us. So let's get into it. Talking first about what's happening in Congress right now. So as we're recording this, the House is in recess, but they will be coming back for another vote. McCarthy has lost round after round, even though he's increasingly promised concessions to these far right Republicans that have been demanding concessions from him, demanding asks from him in return for their vote. So by the time this is out, possibly that will be resolved. But as of right now, these Republicans are showing that when you put demands on the table and you use your leverage, which is your vote, you can get them. So this is though how the media is greeting the far right revolt in the House, and they're not very happy with these Republican holdouts. So this is a compilation.
An epic fail and stunning humiliation for Kevin McCarthy, who took the knee for Donald Trump, then gave away the store to the cuckoo fringe of his party.
You couldn't construct a narrative that combines the elements of extremism, election denialism, and incompetence more perfectly than the last 12 hours on the Republican side in the House.
It's embarrassing, I do, and there's a lot of hard feelings on both sides. Again, you have 90% of the caucus, 90% of the caucus standing firmly behind Kevin McCarthy.
They look petty. I mean, they're putting on a show. I'll call it political porn.
Has decided instead to pull the pin on the grenade and toss it among themselves. What an extraordinary moment of political failure by a political party.
It's either personal against Kevin, or remember that this is the same brain trust that brought you almost 2 years ago, January 6th.
The way that they've gone about trying to achieve these demands has resulted in essentially this terrorist standoff between them and the overwhelming majority of people in their conference.
So these lawmakers are terrorists.
I thought that, if I hadn't heard them say this, Kevin McCarthy, I didn't know who the hell he was back when people were saying this, like, yeah, Kevin McCarthy will be speaker. And now they're like, what? It's just unbelievable.
So here's one of the lawmakers who are leading this revolt, Matt Gaetz of Florida. And listen to what he said the other day on the House floor about Kevin McCarthy.
Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who wants it so bad. Maybe the right person for the job of Speaker of the House isn't someone who has sold shares of themselves for more than a decade to get it. Maybe Jim Jordan is the right person for Speaker of the House because he is not beholden to the lobbyists and special interests who have corrupted this place and corrupted this nation under the leadership of both Republicans and Democrats.
So let me bring in Briahna Joy Gray, host of the podcast Bad Faith. What do you make of all this?
I got to say, I included that Matt Gaetz clip in a recent monologue I did on the Hill because it sounds incredibly reasonable and exactly like the type of thing I would have liked to have seen progressives say about Nancy Pelosi had they pulled this maneuver 2 years ago. Look, contrast the frankly substantive statements that Gaetz is making there about corruption in the party. Put aside for a second, if you will, the fact that Jim Jordan and the rest of them all take corporate money and they're all bad, and he's kind of eliding that. But if you just take the actual substance of the words and apply it to what could have happened on the Democratic side, it is true that this could have been an opportunity for squad members to highlight the extent to which just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean you're not corrupt and captured. And the reason all of the energy seems to be on the right side of the aisle is because there is more flexibility within the Republican Party to leverage and to lob those kinds of criticisms in a way that they don't have on the Democratic side. So instead, what you have is a bunch of progressives who have been very pointedly attacked by the establishment in their party, led by Nancy Pelosi in the House, whose personal wealth has ballooned over the course of her tenure in Congress, who recently quietly killed a very popular bill to prevent Congress members from doing insider trading to do stock trading. She quietly killed that ban. And none of that ever is a conversation on the left, because the squad members themselves don't really use these opportunities to highlight the extent to which that Vote Blue No Matter Who offers cover for all of these corporatists and their own party as well. So what you see from the mainstream media is none of this, no commentary about how there could be some substantive conversations happening right now. They're really trying to characterize this as a kind of a 1-6 Trumpy, crazy Looney Tunes faction of the Democratic Party that's gone off the farm. But it's not easily characterized that way, because there are 1-6 pro-Trump people on both sides of this. Matt Gaetz, in fact, put Trump's name out there as a prospective Speaker of the House, and I think said in an interview with maybe Hannity, an interview on Fox, that while Trump isn't that good at HR, his choice to endorse McCarthy as Speaker of the House is not one that he agrees with. Ultimately, he still is a fan of Trump. So the Trump, Lauren Boebert's on one side of this, Marjorie Taylor Greene's on another side of this. You can't just pretend this is about some Trumpy 1-6 ideological faction. There's something else going on here.
Did you guys watch the Chip Roy, him talking about it, which I think he did it better than Matt Gaetz? And because a buddy of mine, Aaron, who's a lobbyist, he kept texting me about this while it was going on. He sent me Chip Roy, and he said, what's exciting about this is that they usually buy everyone off with committee appointments and policy promises. The latter they don't keep. This fight's about process, and they can't buy off the holdouts in the traditional manner because they're dug in. So that's only, none of the coverage I saw said anything about this. There's a guy who's a lobbyist told me this, but that's what it's about, is making it. They want the same kind of Democrat. You just do what the lady says, and maybe we'll get to your thing, honey. But this is how adults run things.
Yeah. Marjorie Taylor Greene, we played this clip the other day on the Jimmy Dore show, when she's actually pro-McCarthy right now, even though she's usually very critical of him, because she just wants to get Congress underway. But one of the things that she said in favor of McCarthy was that he helped elect you. He gave you money. He gave you millions of dollars for your campaign to some of these holdouts. So therefore, they should be beholden to him.
Really?
Yeah, she said that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're saying the quiet part out loud. All of this horse trading over committee appointments and all of that, it always happens, right? And when you look back to what happened 2 years ago in Force the Vote, what some commentators were saying is, oh, well, behind the scenes, squad members are asking for these concessions. They're getting these concessions. We should be excited about the fact that they're going to get committee appointments. I promise, I swear. They got a pay-go exemption, all of these kinds of things. And what ended up happening? The squad members had less favorable committee appointments going into the 2021 year in the Biden administration than they did 2 years prior, when they were more junior and had less influence. Katie Porter, who was on a very important and influential financial services committee, had been using her position to have these famous whiteboard soliloquies that were very embarrassing, frankly, to Wall Street, talking about income inequality, wealth tax, and those kinds of things. She got kicked off reportedly because Maxine Waters, chair of that committee, was pissed off about the fact that it was making it more difficult for people in the committee to fundraise off of Wall Street because Katie Porter was embarrassing them so much. That was what they got for playing ball, being nice to Nancy Pelosi, shaking hands with Mama Bear. It just doesn't work. And what you're seeing here is, at very least, the negotiations coming out into public means there's a little bit more of an accountability mechanism for what the party claims it will offer you and whether it's going to hold up its end of the bargain down the line.
And, the way these Republicans have often been characterized, as you talked about, as basically being devoted to Trump and doing his bidding, that's being exposed here, at least in this case, as being wrong. And what Democrats are doing is, in fact, what they've accused Republicans of being is, in fact, their own mirror image, because they're also voting in lockstep for Hakeem Jeffries with no dissent at all. And we're going to talk more about that. But at that clip you mentioned of Matt Gaetz basically dismissing Trump here, I think I had that. So let's go to that.
I'm always also about the art of the possible. What's possible here? So you did get a number of concessions that I'm not sure if I were on the other side I would have given you, but a number of concessions from McCarthy, an attempt to get to 218. So he lowered the threshold of the votes required to begin the process of removing himself as Speaker. Just one person, one member of the conference can do it now. And to keep, he also agreed to keep his own PAC out of GOP primaries and also to add more Freedom Caucus members.
By the way, on that request about getting McCarthy's PAC to stay out of primaries, imagine if progressives had asked that of Pelosi, meaning that, corporate Democrats can't spend their millions of dollars to defeat progressives. That would have been a huge victory for progressives.
That's so important, especially because Hakeem Jeffries and Josh Gottheimer, literally co-founded a PAC with the express purpose of targeting progressive insurgents in safe blue districts. So the new speaker, who all of the progressives are lining up behind, kicking their feet up on the pews, eating popcorn and celebrating, voting for again and again and again, and consecutive a dozen now rounds of voting, the one they're so proud to vote for is the one that's had a target at their political backs for years now. And the fact that at no point is there any horse trading here that would help to expose that. At no point does any progressive, as they're renominating Hakeem Jeffries, want to stand up and say, actually, I'm not going to nominate him this time because it's worth it for the American people to know that we are not, in fact, a united front. We've been having our arms twisted and been literally targeted with more energy, with more enthusiasm by our own party than, frankly, parts of the right or moderates in this country in terms of the voting base. And it's disgusting. This is a huge concession. By the way, we should also note, I spoke to Jim Zogby on my podcast a couple of months ago. He was a senior advisor to the Jesse Jackson campaign back in the 80s, and as a consequence has had a seat on the DNC committee since then, basically. And earlier this year, he proposed a rule change to keep dark money out of Democratic Party primaries. And he wasn't overly optimistic about how that was going to go, how the vote was going to go, given the nature of corporate capture and the like. But what shocked him was that after all of his decades on the committee and all of the friendships and relationships that he had on the committee, he couldn't even get the vote a second so there could be a vote on it. Not a single person in the room would look him in the eye, and none would even second it, so there could be a vote on the prospect of getting dark money out of politics. Because Democrats know how ugly it would look for them to be on the record saying, "No, this is actually how our party works. This is what we want." So yes, that would be a significant ask and a significant win for progressives in this country. But again, you won't hear a peep out of any of these so-called progressives in the House.
All right, more of this clip of Matt Gaetz talking to Laura Ingraham.
To the House Rules Committee, and I understand he also signed on to a separate approval process for earmarks and allowed floor votes on term limits for members in specific border policy legislation. What else do you require that he do or agree to before Matt Gaetz will say, okay, I'm on board?
I wouldn't be betting on my vote for Kevin McCarthy under almost any circumstance, but it's important to note that all of those bullet points you just presented.
Wait, hold on. Wait, that's personal then. You just made this very principled point. No. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, I'm a man of principle and I believe in X, Y, and Z, but if he gives me X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to vote for him. What?
Well,
how does that make sense?
He just got bashed by Dana Bash.
Here's how it makes sense, Laura. Kevin McCarthy is the masthead of the lobby corps, and I resent the extent to which Kevin McCarthy utilizes the lobbyists and the special interests to be able to dictate how political decisions are made, how policy decisions are made, and how leadership decisions are made. Kevin McCarthy has been in the leadership for 14 years, and he has sold shares of himself to special interests, to political action committees, and so that's why I don't think he is an appropriate choice. He also has no ideology. What's that?
Why is Trump? I mean, you are very close.
Well, I mean,
to
look, I love President.
So why is Trump for him? I mean, how many posts on Truth Social can we see from President Trump telling y'all, okay, this has been fun, but let's wrap it up here?
Well, I love President Trump. I love President Trump. I defended him a great deal in Congress, but HR wasn't always his strong suit. You know, President Trump got us folks like Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr and Jim Mattis and Mark Esper, people who didn't always advance America First policy. So I think Trump has the vision. I do. I think President Trump is wrong to the extent that he supports Kevin McCarthy. I'm going to support President Trump when he runs for re-election in 2024, but I'm not going to back him on this play.
Laura Ingraham is trying to use Trump as a cudgel is really remarkable there. It really shows that they have nothing left in their hand. And Laura Ingraham's someone who, didn't we get leaked texts about her texting Trump desperately not to encourage the 1-6 protesters from going to the White House? Like, she knows that she does not always align with Trump. And the fact that she's trying to fall back on this, engage in this black and white thinking with me, please, Matt, just Trump or no Trump, yes or no. It's so disrespectful to her audience that she can't imagine a world where you could disagree with someone that you still support, and that the Republican Party for so long, frankly, has been running along those lines. We're seeing some real vulnerabilities emerge, not for Trumpism, but for Trump and the fact that those things have become decoupled over time. There was a great New York Times a deep dive into Tucker Carlson and the phenomenon. And one of the things that it pointed out was that Tucker Carlson's wisdom has been that he always understood that there was a difference between Trumpism, the magic that Trump latched onto and popularized, and which he rode for such a long time, and the man himself, who sometimes does Trumpism right and sometimes does Trumpism wrong. And I think a lot of kind of characters that have, you know, successfully ridden this I'm an independent, I'm an outsider wave, like even Elon Musk, in this moment are picking the wrong side of this. They have read the tea leaves wrongly. And you see pushback against Trump. You see pushback against Elon when he tweeted out that he thought McCarthy could be Speaker of the House. Because the average American understands that this kind of chaos is a good thing for them. At the end of the day, the popularity of Congress is like what, single digits? Maybe it's in the 20s. Nobody likes this organization. Everybody understands whatever side you're on, that it's really attenuated from doing anything that people want to do. The Princeton study from 2014 that shows that we live in an oligarchy, that there's no relationship between what the people want and what gets passed in Congress. They see Congress stalled like this. They see, by the way, these Congress members aren't getting paid while this is happening. They're clapping their hands and saying, this is a good thing. Let's return some power to the people. Now, again, I don't want to sound overly credulous. I don't think that that's what the Republicans' goal here is. I don't think they're asking on the whole for things that are substantive or good, or that the progressives would be asking for in this if they were in this position. But that's the tragedy. The tragedy is that through a historical fluke, Democrats similarly 2 years ago had a narrow enough margin, an even narrow margin in the House, such that a handful of progressives could have held it up indefinitely, just like this, and demanded any number of concessions. And 2 years after the fact, we've seen exactly what the Biden administration was willing to do for progressives. And the answer is zilch, nothing, bupkis. And they still are not apologetic about it.
No. And that's the point. It's not to praise the Republican policies here. It's to praise the strategy and to just imagine if progressives had dared to do the same for progressive policies.
Do you notice how much of a full court press it is to be like attached to a person and not anything they're doing?
Yeah.
So, because she goes, oh, it's personal then. It's personal? It's personal? No, I think he's alive. But Trump, you don't like Trump? Is Trump not your best friend? They did that with Bernie too, with Bernie people, where they assume that you all just love Bernie because he's Bernie and not, because he was going to do the things he said he was going to do.
It's never about policy.
Right.
Everybody, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles in January and February in Los Angeles. And then we're going to Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets and become a premium member while you're there.